So Rob, Matt, I got this question recently and I thought I'd throw it out to the Brain Trust. I entered my first tournament and as soon as we did the fist bump handshake, my mind went blank. There was so much adrenaline rush that I could not think straight. It was hard to do the simplest of moves and defenses. Can you give some insight on how to deal with this for the next tournament? Thank you. And it was somebody who didn't want to leave their name. I mean, first of all, I think good for that person for going and putting it on the line. They were probably a couple months into it, maybe a year into it, and they went into a situation where they pretty high percentage chance of them not winning and having a gold medal and all the
50% of the participants lose in their first match. So,
exactly.
Okay.
But I should introduce Matthew here. He's a visiting white belt from California. He was training with Rob for a week. He's competed a couple of times. I thought it'd be great to bring him into the conversation. So, what was your first experience like, and what advice would you have? Like, what do you wish you'd done different?
Well, I'll say that I definitely could not replicate things that I had learned in the academy. Yeah, there's a huge adrenaline dump. Your mind goes blank, and you are fighting to survive. You are not necessarily fighting very smart, not using the technique that you had been practicing. So I think that's normal.
Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face.
Yeah, and I think leading up to it, I was scrambling like, wait a second, I haven't learned any stand-up. I don't know any takedowns. What am I going to do right at the beginning? So I'm on YouTube, easy white belt stand-up, and just trying to find stuff that I get my girlfriend to put on the gi, and we're in the house just trying to figure out, all right, I'm going to go for this, or I'm going to do this, and hopefully it'll just get to the ground really fast. That was my experience. I lucked out in my first match. I think one thing that was really helpful to me was being able to get acquainted with the venue ahead of time. In California, it's often a 2-day tournament. So if your fight is later in the day or the second day, you can go there ahead of time, kind of absorb the atmosphere, get a feeling for where the registration table is, where the little weigh-in corral is.
So you're not panicking about where the bathrooms, you're panicking about the legitimate things you should panic about, but not where the bathrooms and where do I register.
Yeah, and not all at one time. You see it, then you can leave, rest, come back the next day and kind of know what, and not be waiting for 4 hours that second day. You know your time, you come in, you do it instead of sitting there. Because if you get there too early, I find that you are getting more nervous, you're not keeping up with your nutrition or eating right.
That's a really common thing, like people go and they're all ready to fight at 9 o'clock, and when they actually end up fighting at 4 o'clock, they're dehydrated, they've been in a highly adrenalized state for 8 hours, about 8 hours, whatever. They've been in highly adrenalized state all day, they're starving, and it's just not optimal anymore. So, but it's good for you, so you did like a 2-day scouting, reconnoitering, and progressive desensitization.
Yeah, I had teammates who were competing on the Saturday, so I went and cheered them on, and then did my own competitions on the Sunday.
Cool. So if for the next white belt at your club who comes to you says, like you've done this a few times now, like what's the one biggest piece of advice you can?
Absolutely do it. Don't not do it. You will get better by competing, I believe, by the experience.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for people to improve more in 6 months. Improve more in one tournament and then the aftermath, and then like 6 months of training is just a massive recalibration. Rob, you have lots of students who compete.
I wouldn't say lots. I have a good number. So yeah, I always like to say we are not a competition-focused academy because I try to stay above the competition, self-defense, sub-only, IBJJF fray, and say I just teach grappling.
Right.
So we do have.
One of your students, or Matt Kwan just went to the brown belt.
Invitational in San Diego, came in second. We just had a guy win gold at Pans. Yeah, we the students that do compete from our academy, which is actually a small percentage, do very well.
Right.
And so one of the things I do try to tell, especially the first time, the white belt guys, and this is actually a phrase that one of my students, that I'm plagiarizing from one of my students, which is, when you compete at white belt, it's literally a roll of the dice. Competing at higher belts, especially as you get in your black belt, is all about the actual preparation. At brown belt, it's not like a guy does a move you haven't seen before very often. It is all about, are you in shape? Is your timing correct? All the preparation. At white belt, you could be in insanely good shape, think you've got everything figured out, but you've only been doing jiu-jitsu for 6 months or a year, and a guy just does a move you haven't seen before.
Right.
And you can just lose to that. So I don't know if that's going to help you or make you more nervous.
Or you could run into that guy who's been held back at white belt for 3 years.
Exactly.
He cleans up all the white belt tournaments.
Exactly. So as a beginner competitor, the amount of preparation in the sense of learning techniques, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it's pretty irrelevant. You know, like unless you have a really good conceptual grounding and you don't make fundamental mistakes, which every beginner does make, which is
by definition.
by definition, exactly. It doesn't matter how good the program is. It doesn't matter how good a student you are, how good a teacher you have. You just can't know enough. And the fact that that exists should hopefully take a weight off your shoulders and know, like, man, you might just lose to a guy who knows literally twice as much as you do. You know, I don't think there's a black belt out there at the high level that knows twice as much as another black belt, or even at the purple belt level. I would even say at the blue belt level. Certainly at the worlds at blue belt. But at white belt and blue belt locally, you could be a brand new blue belt training for 2 years or a year and a half, or some academies like 6 months or a year. But you
clearly those are very good academies because they bring those people up faster.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Thank you, Stephan.
So
that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Definitely. And whereas you could be competing against a guy who's a blue belt and has been a blue belt for the last 3 or 4 years. So again, you're gonna get slaughtered. Don't worry about it. Like, it doesn't matter. No one, and again, I don't mean that it's not an achievement, or I don't mean that it's not an important thing.
The achievement is doing it.
Yeah, but
like
no
you
one,
said, just do it.
no one on a global scale in jiu-jitsu, no one cares about the results of a white belt tournament. No one's gonna think less of you, or a blue belt, or like blue belt division at a local tournament. They don't matter at all, other than for your own growth. And for your own growth, you're gonna get that whether you win or you lose.
So Matt, did you have any sense of this? Like, you were, responsible for the honor of your team and the reputation of the academy going in there as a brand new white. Because I've run into white belts who literally thought that, like, the reputation of their school, their instructor, and the honor of jiu-jitsu was riding on their shoulders going in.
I can empathize with someone who feel that way. In my particular case, I did not. I did not have a coach there cheering for me.
Terrible students.
So,
Terrible.
No, I didn't have that pressure.
Okay.
And that's a really valid point, because I do make a point of going to every tournament that it is physically possible for me to go to. We're geographically isolated. We're on an island, so we have to travel to compete. So I said to myself and to my students early on, if you guys go compete, I'm going to come with you. If it's at all possible for me to do so. I think I've missed one tournament in the 4 years that I've had my academy, thinking that was always a positive, like, the coach is going to be there and he's going to help me out and he's going to get me through it. Not realizing
they're just like,
God,
I wish you wouldn't come.
I'm going to shit the bed in front of Rob and jerk off. Why can't he stay home on a Saturday? So to counteract that, I very much do that. Guys, we are going to compete to have fun. Yeah. You win, you lose, I don't care. Do your best, show up in shape. I'm gonna buy y'all burgers afterwards, no matter what happens, right? Like, I don't care,
You get the double burger with all the fixings because you did well.
Yeah.
And you get the plain little mini
Yeah.
slider.
And we really try to make it about having a fun road trip and cracking jokes, and I know I'm very intense when I coach. But as soon as the match is over, it's like, if you did great, you did great. If you didn't, who cares? It's definitely something that we try to take away that edge of you're representing the academy, and if you fail, we fail. And everyone loses at every level. And especially, again, good to go back to that, you could be a brand new blue belt, and no matter how good you are for where you're at, you could be competing against a guy with literally 2-3 times the mat time and 10 times the competition experience you have. You're not going to beat that guy. Don't worry about it. Do your best. You'll learn from the loss.
Yeah. I think I'm going to jump in here, and the couple of things that I see. One is people getting out there and holding their breath. And I've ranted about this before. They get out there and they think they're breathing, but they're not. And they get completely exhausted within 30 seconds. You don't hold your, the Olympics are on right now. You see people swimming the one length of the pool without taking a single breath. They don't swim 2 lengths of the pool without taking a single breath. Yeah. That doesn't happen, or maybe. So, see the jiu-jitsu, the white belts going, and then just holding their breath for 2 minutes, or breathing super shallow, and then they're exhausted, and then
the sort of, I don't know if it's a corollary or just kind of relevant to that, is when I see the white belt judo match between 2 guys that obviously don't know anything other than a foot sweep attempt, and they're stiff arming, and whether they're breathing or not, they're exhausting themselves for no reason.
Doing terrible judo.
Doing terrible judo, yeah. If you want to do terrible judo, sign up for a judo tournament. You know, if you get, I always tell, even my students that are excellent at takedowns, I have a student that's a judo black belt, he's fantastic. I tell him, try for 1 or 2 takedowns, then pull guard. You know, if you're there to do judo, maybe again at the world, at a super meaningful high level tournament, you've got a game plan and maybe you want to stick with it for the whole time. But as a white belt,
As a learning experience.
as a learning experience, you will learn nothing from doing bad judo for 5 minutes. Pull guard, get it to the ground, and just have an actual jiu-jitsu battle at that point.
Yeah. Do the stuff that you're training to do.
Yeah.
You ever going to compete again, or do you think you're done?
No, I'll definitely compete again.
Okay. Like, what makes you decide whether you want to do a tournament? Is it just like you feel like you should do one every few months, or
Yeah, I think it helps me kind of structure my jiu-jitsu training and take it. For me, it's an aid to maybe take it more seriously over the course of several months leading up to that tournament, and to have something to look forward to. I think it's also a really good way to test yourself. You know, you can test yourself with your buddy in the academy and say, hey, let's really roll hard today. You know, let's just have an all-out match. It's just not the same as when you go and, you know, despite that you're there to have fun and to learn, the stakes are a little bit higher, and you, I think it's a really revealing test to compete against other academies.
Yeah. I mean, Eric Paulson once said that you can learn more in one competition than you can in 6 months of training sometimes, and I think that's true. I mean, who knows whether that's what you learn in the tournament or how much it focuses you going into it and coming out of it going, I will never let my guard get passed that way ever again.
Yeah.
And then going deep on, say, guard retention, or going deep on, I will never not finish a triangle choke that's that close ever again. And then going down the triangle choke rabbit hole. Any final words, Rob? You don't force your students to compete.
Never. I mean, we've had many conversations about the idea of hierarchy and how much power any instructor should have over their students. Not only do I not force them to compete, I don't even really encourage them to compete. I'm like, hey guys, there's another tournament around the corner. If by the way, there's also another promotion ceremony around the corner. We don't do that sort of thing, right? You're gonna advance based
a promotion
on
ceremony that you can pay money.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's another stripe. That'll be $50.
Yeah.
Piece of tape.
So compete if you want.
And by the way, there are now 10 stripes for belt.
Yeah.
$50 a stripe.
Yeah, so I don't, if you want to compete, I do definitely explain what the advantages are of competition, and at the same time, talk about what we talked about today, which is don't worry about it. If the only reason you're not competing is because you're worried about losing or, getting injured or anything like that, go out. If you get your guard passed and you even think you're going to get armbarred, just tap. Literally, it's a $2 medal, guys. At the nice tournaments, it's a $10 medal. What are you doing getting injured for? So what are you doing taking that? Unless you are a professional grappler, unless you are, somebody who has an academy, or you're a sponsored athlete or something like that, don't worry about it. It's an experience that, we talk about how much pressure testing is the salient point of jiu-jitsu training. That is the ultimate in pressure testing. So if I'm going to take a stab at the self-defense guys again and say, if you're training for self-defense and you've never competed, you're not training for self-defense.
Right.
You are not taking advantage of the ultimate tool for simulating the stress, the adrenaline, all that, the unpredictability. Even though I know it's a restricted environment, I get that.
No, but it's the mental aspect.
But it's the mental aspect, and that you don't know what he's going to do. He's doing jiu-jitsu, but that's about it.
It's not Fred who always
does that pass.
Delahi guard.
Exactly.
It's some guy that you've never seen before from some school that you don't know about.
You never know how strong he is. You don't know if he's going to go for takedowns or pull guard. All that stuff. That you've got to process that in a split second and react. And that's what self-defense is. Self-defense isn't a magical set of moves. It's having the awareness to react under unpredictable circumstances. And that's what we're training when we roll, but that's what we're training even more when we compete. So there you go. If you claim to be training for self-defense and yet turn around and say, well, I never compete.
Yeah, there's a disconnect.
Total, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Question,
Yep.
do you guys ever run in-house tournaments where it's just okay, everybody's watching, 2 guys simulate coming onto the mat, you've got a guy acting as a referee?
In competition prep, yeah.
There's actually a lot of jiu-jitsu schools where they can only send 2 representatives to a certain tournament.
Yeah.
So then they'll have an in-house tournament for the right to go compete at the actual tournament itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I know in the Carlson Gracie days back in Brazil, those in-house tournaments were wilder, more hotly contested, and more violent than the ones at the actual final tournament. Because that would be another way to ramp the pressure up.
Totally,
Yes,
yeah.
you know Fred always pulls De La Riva guard, but now he's going to pull it for real. We're for realsies.
Yeah.
It's the in-house tournament way is it's a good way for progressive desensitization, the way that Matthew was talking about. And some of the better schools, they do have like mock tournaments with mock points and mock timers, and
Yeah,
you
when
heard
we
about
did
people jeering.
Well,
like,
we did the PANS camp at Coyotes, and that was a Sunday. You show up, and we started at like 11 a.m., and I don't think we left till 6 p.m. because we just did matches, and we'd have 3 refs to simulate a finals match, timer, calling out points, advance, everything, like full-on simulated matches. And yeah, we just went all day. So you have it totally exactly simulated a day that you have your match, then another guy has a match, and then you're waiting. Sometimes you're waiting for an hour before you compete again. Sometimes we'd pick a guy at random to like, oh, you just did a match, we'll come back now. You're doing another match, so you're tired and you got to do a match. And yeah, just all day, full time, everything, every aspect of it. Coaching. The losing coach had to do push-ups. That's when the phrase, Rob, those are the worst push-ups I've ever seen, came about.
Excellent question, Paul, the cameraman. Thanks for joining the conversation.